Think of a state and an image comes to mind. Maybe a tropical beach for Hawaii or rows of cornfields for Iowa. But in each state, too, lie areas that defy expectations, that stand out in some way from the perception, the image we have of them. In this video, I'll be sharing only my own opinions. This is by no means an objective analysis, but I'll be taking you through each state alphabetically, describing at least what I imagine to be the stereotypical image of that state, then briefly highlight a place, whether it's an entire region, a city, or even a smaller area like a park, that just feels different from how we picture the rest of the state to be. I've released this in 2 parts. My video with the first 25 states is already up. The order you watch these in doesn't matter, but if you enjoy this and haven't seen the other part, I definitely recommend you go back and give it a watch afterwards. Hello and welcome to That Is Interesting. I'm your host, Carter. Today, a part of each state that defies expectations. We're starting today in the middle of the list with Montana. Maybe it's because its name comes from the Spanish word for mountain, but I hear Montana and I immediately think mountains. Some of the most spectacular ranges of the Rockies are on full display here at Glacier National Park or near Yellowstone. The country's 4th biggest state is its 3rd most sparsely populated, a rugged wilderness sought out by people hoping to ski, ranch, fly fish, hike, backpack, or whitewater raft. Do a quick Google image search of Montana and see how long it takes before you find a picture that doesn't include mountains. You might be surprised then that a full 3/5 of the state isn't mountainous at all. Eastern Montana is, save for some lone peaks and ridges of hills, mostly plains and prairies. Still rugged and punctuated by buttes and badlands, this is the western edge of the Great Plains, its landscape not too different from neighboring North Dakota. There's another reason eastern Montana gets overlooked. Unlike most other states, most Montanans live in western Montana, in or very close to the mountains. It's the rugged west, not the drier, flatter east, that's the rural state's population center. Think Nebraska, on the other hand, and you think flat farm country. I mean, they are the Cornhuskers. It's the country's 3rd biggest farming state, and the perception is probably boosted by the fact that for most outsiders, their experience with Nebraska is likely a drive across the state via I-80, which follows the pancake flat valley of the Platte River, dodging the more topographically interesting sandhills, badlands, and bluffs to the north. Something I guarantee you don't think of are forests. But Nebraska, only 3% of which is covered in trees, less than any state but North Dakota, is home to nothing less than a national forest. In the northwestern corner of the state near Chadron, Nebraska National Forest was the brainchild of a botany professor at the University of Nebraska, who got Theodore Roosevelt to preserve a section of Nebraska's barren sandhills to see if he could grow trees. I knew it was too good to be true. But he was pretty successful. For a while, it was the largest man-made forest on the planet. Nevada makes me think of the desert, or Vegas, which is in the desert. Travel through most of the state and you're driving through desert valleys, basins, and salt pans or arid meadows, sitting between tall Great Basin mountain ranges. Though it's a huge state, most of it looks remarkably similar from north to south, east to west. There is a huge outlier here though, and that's Lake Tahoe. Split between Nevada and California, the country's largest lake by volume outside of the Great Lakes sits on the other side of the rain shadow that keeps the rest of the state so arid. High in the Sierra Nevada, it receives a ton of snow and is home to world-famous ski resorts. Not only is the lake itself filled with water, but the slopes of the mountains surrounding it make this tiny corner of Nevada lush and green. Make the short drive from Reno or Carson City, and it's stunning how quickly the landscape changes when you cross the mountains. It looks absolutely nothing like the rest of the state. New Hampshire makes me think of the White Mountains and milling cities like Manchester and Nashua. In the state's north, the town of Berlin, just beyond Mount Washington, checks all those boxes. It looks and feels quintessentially New Hampshire. Berlin, though, is different in another way. It's one of the few French-speaking places in the country. 65% of residents speak French, making it the largest majority Francophone city in the U.S. Unlike the St. John Valley in neighboring Maine, whose inhabitants are descended from the French colony of Acadia, Berlin's French speakers trace their ancestry to immigrants from Quebec. Nearly 1 million people left Quebec in the late 1800s and early 1900s, pushed out by overpopulation and seeking jobs in the mill towns of New England. The timber and paper milling town of Berlin was one such destination, and closer to Quebec than the cities of southern New Hampshire, descendants of these French-Canadian immigrants maintain their language even a century and a half on. New Jersey. The most densely populated state in the U.S., 9.5 million people live in one of the country's smallest states. From cities like Newark, Jersey City, and Trenton, to the sprawling suburbia emanating out from neighboring New York City and Philadelphia, and the highly developed beach towns at the Jersey Shore like Atlantic City, New Jersey is built up and filled with people. That's why it's easy to forget that this little state is home to a good bit of nature. I'm going with the Pine Barrens, because not only is a wild stretch of Jersey unusual on its own, but this is a landscape that's pretty unique in the country overall. In the heart of the built-up string of cities called the Northeast Megalopolis, the Pine Barrens are a vast expanse of pine forest growing in sand, the largest woodland on the east coast of the United States between the Everglades and Maine. Its sandy soil made the region nearly impossible to farm. Difficult to settle, much of it has since been protected from the development that has since sprawled across much of Jersey. Today, this forest of sand is a sparsely populated wilderness in one of the most built-up parts of the country. New Mexico is one of the largest and, in my opinion, most beautiful states in the country. Culturally and geographically fascinating, this classic southwestern state is home to deserts, beautiful natural areas like Shiprock, the national parks of White Sands and the Carlsbad Caverns, and centuries-old cities like Santa Fe and Taos. Much of New Mexico is occupied by deserts and arid prairies, but north of Santa Fe, the Rocky Mountains stretch into the state, covered in forests with snow-capped peaks. Winter sports like skiing and snowboarding are popular in Taos. The Valles Caldera is an enormous volcano covered in forests and lush meadows. The area looks more like the landscapes that define neighboring Colorado than New Mexico. New York is defined by its largest city in a way that few other states are. I mean, say its name and people will often assume you're talking about the city, not the state. The largest city in the country is so huge that it and its Connecticut and New Jersey suburbs are together home to more people than live in all of New York State, including the city. And upstate New York is home to several major cities of its own. With this in mind, you could honestly make the case to just choose all of upstate New York, but I'm going with one section of this large state in particular, the Adirondacks. An ancient mountain range considered separate from the nearby Appalachians, this beautiful land of tranquil lakes, snow-capped peaks, maple syrup taps, Olympic ski resorts, and spectacular fall foliage is protected as the massive Adirondack Park. To the east, Lake Champlain separates it from Vermont's Green Mountains, and honestly, this part of the state looks and feels much more New England than New York. North Carolina was a tough one, with the beautiful Great Smoky Mountains, the coastal barrier islands of the Outer Banks, and the major cities of the Piedmont in between. These regions all feel very North Carolina. What you might not know, though, is that this East Coast state is home to the largest proportion of Native American residents in any state east of the Mississippi. Native Americans across the country were decimated by disease, warfare, and seizure of land upon the arrival of European colonists. But those in the East Coast were particularly unfortunate, falling victim to the early arrival of epidemics like smallpox and pushed west as land-hungry English settlers moved in. Because of this, the country's eastern states have some of the smallest proportions of indigenous residents in the nation. The one notable exception, though, are North Carolina's Lumbee, who live in the south of the state in Robeson County. The origins of the tribe are not entirely clear and have been subject to debate. One theory I find pretty plausible is that they're descended from a number of local tribes that banded together as their homelands were colonized, as well as free black and white settlers who married into the tribe. Having some ancestors from Europe and Africa could explain why they fared better against old world diseases like smallpox than nearly every other eastern tribe. Some believe, including many Lumbee themselves, that the tribe's European ancestors are none other than the lost English colonists of Roanoke, who most scholars believe left and joined the local Croatan native people, who they were allies with. In fact, many common Lumbee surnames can be found in the lists of Roanoke colonists. As I write this unique tribe appears on the brink of finally receiving federal recognition. With its prairies, grasslands, and badlands, North Dakota is a quintessential Great Plains state. It's so flat and treeless that residents joke that you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. That's what makes Turtle Mountain, a forest-covered plateau located on the border between North Dakota and Canada, so unusual. Though more a hilly plateau than mountain, the rise in the earth is enough to give the region more rain than the nearby prairies, filling it with lakes and allowing trees to flourish. It's home to a significant indigenous population, An Ojibwe band called the Turtle Mountain Chippewa call it home, as do a number of Métis, descendants of native people and French colonial trappers and fur traders. The region is home to one of North Dakota's most famous landmarks, the Peace Garden on the international border between it and Manitoba. Look at these beautiful islands. The blue water stretching as far as the eye can see. The lighthouses, vacation homes, harbors, charming resort towns. It looks like paradise. Now, what if I told you they were in Ohio? You might be thinking, what? Ohio has islands? One of the country's most populous states, a center of industry and manufacturing, home to major cities like Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, where the farms of the Midwest meet the Hocking Hills of Appalachia. It's easy to forget the Lake Erie Islands, a chain stretching into the lake north of Sandusky, split internationally between Ohio and Ontario. The four main American islands, accessible only by ferry, are a vacation spot even home to vineyards and wineries. Oliver Hazard Perry won an important naval victory there over the British in the War of 1812. On the Canadian side, tiny Middle Island is the southernmost point in all of Canada. We don't often think of Ohio as a border state, but the Canadian and American islands are just 4 miles apart. Oklahoma. I think of prairies, oil fields, cowboys, ranches, and tornadoes, the meeting point of the Great Plains in the southwest. The eastern half of the state, though, is made up of the Washitas and Ozarks, lush green mountains stretching in from Arkansas. Geographically, it's indistinguishable from its eastern neighbor. Even though it's a huge portion of the state, home to the major city of Tulsa, I think people tend to forget that a lot of Oklahoma is covered in mountains. I mean, these look like the Appalachians in a state often considered part of the Southwest. The state even has alligators living in the swampy southeastern corner of the state along the Red River. Swamps and gators in Oklahoma? Seems crazy until you remember that it's just 50 miles from Louisiana. I hear Oregon and I think of the Pacific Northwest. Rainy, cloudy, with lush forests, spectacular thundering waterfalls, and the high snow-capped peaks of the Cascades like Mount Hood. The majority of the state, though, looks nothing like that. Oregon east of the Cascades looks like a different planet from the western third of the state where some 87% of the population lives. The other 13% call home the vast high deserts of eastern Oregon. The Cascades create a rain shadow effect over much of eastern Oregon, save for high peaks like the Wallowa Mountains. Though still home to a number of large forests, it has left much of the region dominated by dry meadows and even deserts. These high-elevation arid plateaus are home to salt flats, lava fields like the enormous Newberry volcano, beautiful rock formations like Smith Rock, and spectacular gorges like the Owyhee Canyonlands and Hell's Canyon, the deepest canyon in the U.S. Irrigated farm country lines the Columbia River across from Washington and the Snake River opposite Idaho. In fact, this politically conservative farming and ranching region has even attempted to join Idaho, a proposal near impossible to succeed, but it goes to show just how different the region, which looks more like Idaho or Nevada than Western Oregon, really is. The country's fifth most populous state, Pennsylvania is home to two major American cities, Philadelphia in the east and Pittsburgh in the west. Between the two, the valleys and ridges of the Appalachians and their foothills dominate. The state is covered in steep hills, ravines, and forests. Even the part nearest the coast, the southeastern corner near Philly, is flatter but still home to a number of rolling hills. It and Vermont are the only northeastern states with no coastline, so when I picture the state I grew up in, it's Pennsylvania's hills, mountains, and forests that I think of. I mean, its name translates to Penn's Woods. So this one's an easy choice, and it's Pennsylvania's tiny shore on Lake Erie. The little Erie Triangle, given to the state so it could have a port on the Great Lakes, is very different. Ground down by glaciers, it's maybe the only flat part of the state, is home to vineyards and some really nice beaches. Presque Isle, a large peninsula jutting off the city of Erie, is covered in some large sandy beaches. Relaxing in the sand, watching the waves crash, and staring off into the endless expanse of water before you, it's hard to believe you're in landlocked PA. The country's smallest state was a tough one, so thank you to everyone in the comments who recommended the West Greenwich Sand Dunes for Rhode Island. The famously tiny state revolves around the city of Providence, Narragansett Bay, and its islands and port towns, defined by its rich maritime culture. Sitting in the Big River Management Area, the dunes, sometimes nicknamed the Rhode Island Desert, are located inland in the middle of forest. This barren stretch of sand in the middle of the New England woods seems shockingly out of place in the ocean state. Trees and topsoil cleared so the sands beneath could be quarried. It was eventually abandoned and turned over to the state, the piles of sand remaining, shaped by wind and rain into these pretty neat dunes. South Carolina is known for its coast, flat lowlands, swamps, and islands. You might think of the historic port city of Charleston, or the popular vacation destinations of Myrtle Beach or Hilton Head. The small southern state punches well above its weight in tourism. Only 6 other states bring in more visitors every year, and many are drawn to the state's beaches and coast, and most South Carolinians live either on the coast or in the gentle hills of the Piedmont. Mountains are certainly not the first thing that comes to mind, but the Appalachians push barely into the Palmetto State, hugging the borders with Georgia and North Carolina. Typically reaching in just a few miles across the border, these are still some pretty serious mountains, and scenes like this definitely don't scream South Carolina. My choice for South Dakota might be a surprise pick. The state, which is mostly taken up by Great Plains, is home to 2 of the most distinctive and unusual geographic features in the country: the Badlands, which look like they could be a different planet, and the Black Hills, the highest mountain range in North America east of the Rockies. But both of these areas are very representative of the state. I mean, Mount Rushmore in the Black Hills is the only place a lot of people know of in South Dakota. So I'm going with Coteau de Prairie in the east of the state. Between the valleys of the Minnesota and James Rivers, this plateau stretching from north of Sioux Falls to North Dakota is covered in lakes. As glaciers melted, they left behind chunks of ice which carved holes called kettles into the region's landscape. When they melted, they left behind hundreds of lakes, some large, some small. In a state known for its dry plains and prairies, this region looks more like neighboring Minnesota. For Tennessee, a state known for its beautiful Great Smoky Mountains and the popular fast-growing music city of Nashville, I'm choosing Reelfoot Lake, another great viewer suggestion. East Tennessee is mountainous, Middle Tennessee covered by wooded hills. In West Tennessee, though, the state gets flatter, particularly along the Mississippi River. Reelfoot Lake, along the river, was formed during the New Madrid earthquakes, which struck the region in 1811 and 1812. These quakes were so powerful that they even caused the Mississippi River to briefly flow backwards and nearby land to sink. A forested section of the valley dropped suddenly in elevation and was flooded by river water, creating Reelfoot Lake. With cypress trees sticking out of the water, it's a scene more reminiscent of the Louisiana bayous than inland Tennessee. Texas was a tough one. It's a huge state, surpassed in size by only Alaska, and each of its regions are enormous. Interestingly enough, the region that I'd argue looms largest in the wider cultural imagination is West Texas. Besides several of the country's largest cities, I think of deserts, high dry plains, cowboys, cattle drives, rodeos, and oil wells. In many ways, it's classic Southwest. So I'd say that East Texas, particularly the areas beyond Houston, most strongly defies that stereotype. A forest known as the Big Thicket covers much of the region, while to the west, the state is far more treeless. Lush and green bayous fill a swampy coast along the Louisiana border, and Louisiana Cajuns have crossed the state line in following oil jobs. These forests so strongly separate the culturally southern east from the rest of the state that some Texans call it the Pine Curtain. Utah. Flame red rocks, stunning canyons, cliffs, stone arches, deserts, and snow-capped peaks popular with skiers. It's home to more national parks than any state save for the far larger California and Alaska, and can make a great case for being one of the most beautiful states in the nation. With so many regions and geographic features that are among the most unique in the country, what stands out from the rest of Utah? For that, I'm picking Bear Lake. Split between it and Idaho and not far from the Wyoming border, its stunningly turquoise waters and sandy beaches have led some to nickname it the Caribbean of the Rockies. This state is hardly often thought of as a swimmer's paradise, but this lake on the Idaho border is a popular vacation spot for locals. The beautiful Green Mountains cover nearly the entire state of Vermont. Home to wilderness areas, ski towns, small farms, and scenic villages, it's quintessentially New England. Really nowhere in the state is not in, or at least in view of, the mountains. With that said, for Vermont's most unique region, I'm going with the Champlain Islands. Lake Champlain stretches down half the length of Vermont's border with New York and is home to some 70 islands, mostly located in Vermont. One of the rare flatter regions in the state, they include 3 pretty large islands: Grand Isle, North Hero, and Isle La Motte, connected by bridges to the mainland. A nearby flat peninsula called the Alberg Tongue, jutting out into the lake, is cut off by land from the rest of the United States, though a bridge links it to the rest of Vermont. Without crossing water, you'd have to go through Quebec. I don't typically think of Vermont as an island state, but it's home to quite a few. The rugged, mountainous western counties of Virginia, lying beyond the initial peaks of the Blue Ridge, left the state during the Civil War to remain with the Union, becoming the state of West Virginia. Well, most of them did. The Old South Commonwealth of Virginia, among the most populous and prominent in early American history, is known for its scenic countryside, historic towns dating back hundreds of years, beaches, wealthy D.C. suburbs, and yes, the mountain views of Shenandoah National Park and the Blue Ridge Parkway. Beyond the Blue Ridge Mountains, the mountainous Appalachian Plateau and its narrow hollows and canyons epitomize much of West Virginia's landscape. But a portion of the plateau stretches into the southwestern corner of Virginia. With a landscape almost identical to neighboring West Virginia and eastern Kentucky, it is, like its neighbors, coal country, its landscape pockmarked by dozens of mines. Like its neighbors as well, its small towns are nestled in the floors of the hollows that wind through the mountains. Isolated and remote, it's by far the poorest portion of one of the country's wealthier states. Its rugged, beautiful landscape, very different from the rest of Virginia. For the state of Washington, I'm very broadly going with central and eastern Washington, everything east of the Cascades. The Pacific Northwest state is known for its heavy rainfall, dense evergreen forests, beautiful snow-capped peaks like the volcanic Mount Rainier, and of course the large coastal city of Seattle, a tech center and port city on Puget Sound. 3/4 of Washingtonians live in lush green western Washington, but across the Cascades, the large east of the state could not be more different. Some of the rainiest and some of the driest parts of the country are both located in Washington. It's home to both deserts and rainforests. Like in Oregon, the rain shadow caused by the Cascades has made much of central and eastern Washington a high desert. Geographically, one of the most unusual places in the country, the agricultural Columbia Basin, a center of apple and hay farming, is interrupted by huge deposits of basalt, remnants of ancient lava flows. Impressive canyons called coulees scar the earth, formed by prehistoric floods from a massive glacial lake called Lake Missoula. A dried-up waterfall, aptly named Dry Falls, was once the largest waterfall on the planet, 5 times the size of Niagara. Soap Lake gets its name from minerals which cause it to foam. On the border with Idaho, a region called the Palouse looks like it might be out of a Dr. Seuss book. The tall, wave-shaped hills were formed from fine soils and sediments called loess blown by wind into the region. Not as remote as eastern Oregon, Spokane is the state's second largest urban area, these high deserts are still overshadowed in both population and the popular imagination by the rainy, densely populated West. West Virginia. The mountain state is coal country, known for its mines, its persistent poverty, but also some of the most beautiful natural scenery in the eastern U.S., like one of the newest national parks in the country, New River Gorge. What if I told you it was also home to a swamp? A cranberry bog, in fact. Floating on water, cranberries are typically grown in flat regions, often along the coast. But thousands of feet up in the West Virginia Appalachians sit the Cranberry Glades Botanical Area. The high elevation of the glades keeps weather cooler, allowing cranberries to survive further south than they typically do. Dating back to a time when southern-reaching glaciers and the wet, cool climates in areas around them allowed peat bogs to develop, these marshlands, high in the Appalachians, look like they could be in the coast of New England or even Canada, certainly not West Virginia. Wisconsin, home to dairy farms, forests, rolling hills, and the lakeside cities of Milwaukee and Madison. Though home to a number of very different and beautiful regions, I'm choosing the Apostle Islands. Jutting off the state's Bayfield Peninsula into Lake Superior, the islands and their red cliffs form impressive sea caves that you can explore by boat. Their high cliffs and red rocks don't scream Wisconsin to me, and make for a pretty impressive sight. Madeline Island, the largest, is reachable in the winter time via an ice road over the frozen Great Lake. Bighorn Canyon, with its sharp red cliffs, looks straight out of the southwest, but it's located in northern Wyoming, spanning the border between Wyoming and Montana. The country's least populous state is covered in some of the most spectacular wilderness you'll ever see, from the geysers and bison herds of Yellowstone to the jagged peaks of Grand Teton. But one of the more understated aspects of the cowboy state's stunning scenery are its red rocks. Outcroppings of bright red rocks can be found across the state, at times part of arid regions like the Red Desert in the south, and other places jutting out of green grassy meadows. Bighorn Canyon, another great viewer suggestion, is one of the best examples of Wyoming's red rocks. Along the Bighorn River and its tributaries, it looks more like something you'd picture in Utah or Arizona than up north in Wyoming. Thank you all so much for watching. If you're new here and like these kind of videos, please subscribe and leave me a comment letting me know what you think and what else you'd like to see. These unusual region videos have been a lot of fun to put together, and I'm thinking about continuing the series, highlighting a region that defines expectations in every country around the world. I'm curious as to what you all think of that idea. If you like US geography, you've come to the right place. If you want to learn more about any of the places I talked about in this video, my longest running series, The US Explained, dives deep into every state, territory, and federal district in the country in order of admission. I also have videos on the country's regions, ancestry, religions, and other fun videos like places that I think should be a national park. Please check it out. I think you'll like what you'll find. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something new. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover the countries, cities, people, and places of the world and beyond. These videos will leave you saying, that is interesting.